Hello, my name is Barica. I am delighted to be here with you today. This is such an, I can't say unexpected pleasure because it was all planned, right? But just seeing all of your faces makes me feel something I hadn't planned. And I'm really delighted to be here. I'm based in Slovenia, in Ljubljana, the capital. So as Caroline mentioned very kindly, I'm a senior executive coach and supervisor to coaches and consultants. I work within my own practice in Ljubljana, but I work globally. And I think for me it's a special privilege to be able to speak with you today and have you as an audience. I would just like to say at the beginning that please use the camera as you feel it. I like to see you, but if you're not in the position to have it on, I also completely understand. So why am I here today? Over the years, I have helped many coaches, consultants, and psychotherapists start their own practices. And I thought that my approach could be useful to coaches in the Ashridge community. So the plan for today is to take you through a series of slides that I have prepared. I think it helps me, most of all, stay structured and stay on time. There will also be a short self-assessment exercise, and towards the end of the webinar, we will have time for your questions, commentaries, whatever you might need at that point. And we'll be open to activate your mics or put your questions into the chat. And I'm so grateful.
You have no sound.
Barica, you're on mute.
You're on mute, yeah.
Okay. Was I on mute all the time? No.
No,
okay.
just now.
It's just popped up. Okay. Agreed. So I will now start my presentation, and please bear with me just for me to set this up. A second. Okay. And if anything is not working properly, please someone just say so. Or if there's anything wrong with the sound, just say so, because I always feel I'm not alone in the room. I have all of you helping me. So we can do this. I mean, I can do this also with your help.
Just say you're in presenter view, you might want to change to display view.
In what way?
I see all your upcoming slides on the left. You might want to full screen it to be just the main slide.
Okay, sorry. Let me just check that. This is not something I planned. Okay. Sorry, just bear with me. Okay. Is it still the same? Okay. I don't know how that happened, but thank you. Thank you for pointing it out. You see? Thank you for your help. Okay, so my starting premise when working with coaches, consultants, and psychotherapists, although I will mostly be speaking about coaches from here on, is that if you're thinking about moving towards paid client work, you're probably more ready than you think. Many coaches I work with are capable, thoughtful, and well qualified, and yet they hesitate to move towards paid work. And the reason is rarely skill. It's usually a combination of structure, identity, and permission. And today, during this webinar, we're going to focus on that gap and hopefully make it more workable. So there is a subtle, in my experience, when working with coaches who want to make the transition, there is a subtle but profound shift from being a student of coaching to becoming a practitioner. Because in training, you are held, and you are held by your faculty, your supervisors, and the structure of your training. In practice, you become the container. And that shift can feel destabilizing, and it's often misinterpreted as I am not ready. And when working with coaches and consultants, I invite them to redefine what it means to be client ready. We look for the easiest starting point and for movement forward by making baby steps. Because looking at the whole path is sometimes as if you had this big mountain in front of you and it feels unsurmountable. So to make it slightly easier, I have tried to structure the transition from student or hesitating coach to active practitioner in 3 dimensions. And the 3 dimensions I want to talk about is the inner dimension, the structural dimension, by which I mean all the logistics things you need to put in place in order to be able to onboard and work with clients, and then the relational dimension, which includes being ready to talk about what you do and use the existing networks and relationships to help you with that. So before we move forward, I would actually like to invite you to use the 3 dimensions as a self-assessment lens. I would invite you to take, I don't know, 3 to 5 minutes and try to look at the questions I'm sharing with you on the slide and just rate yourself somewhere between 1 and 5, 1 being unclear and not ready, and 5 being very clear and ready. So the questions I want you to focus on are, and I'm just struggling, sorry, with, oh, I have to move this, yes. So looking at the inner dimension, do you feel permitted to work with paying clients? And do you trust your experience and training at this point? So we're talking about the here and now. In terms of the structural dimension, could you onboard a client tomorrow without chaos? And do you have a simple offer and basic systems in place? And then the relational dimension, can you clearly articulate who you help and then invite someone into a conversation about that? So take a minute and just think about those questions. And I will pause here. A part of what you noticed, but take your time. Maybe I'm being too quick. Yes, we have anyone who would like to share a little bit about their readiness? Yes, Naomi? Could you switch your microphone on, please?
Can you hear me okay?
Very well, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, so I really like the question. I have an offer of like a 90-minute, it's not a power hour, doesn't work so well when you say 90-minute power hour, but you get the idea. It's a very clear offer to academics based on the sort of patterns of workload management I've seen over the years and the sorts of things I know I can ask them that get them to respond quickly. And I can generally save them quite a bit of time by talking them through. It's not anything massively formulaic on my part, but sometimes it's the idea is that we think about the fish that swim along together, and one says the water's cold, and the other says what's water. There's so many normal working practices that I can unpack with somebody in that time. So in terms of selling it and getting results from it, it works. But what was also interesting about your question is I wonder within organizations how much they sell their coaching to their internal audiences, because it's one thing to say have coaching, but it's an entirely different thing to speak the language of the coachee and what they're looking for from the intervention.
I understand. So how did you assess yourself in the now regarding your readiness?
I would say a 4 in terms of readiness.
Yeah.
But in terms of the actual this piece about permission, I need to give myself permission to sell that more forcefully. I know it works. I've done hundreds of them under the banner of organizations that pay me to do these sessions. So I'm a self-employed consultant anyway, so I know that I get paid for it, but it's a different thing to take it straight to the marketplace on my own. So that's where I'm less ready.
Yeah. So permission and selling is something I'm going to talk about a little bit later on, because and thank you for mentioning that very word, selling, because I will come back to that. And I would just stress at this point, and I will probably stress it again later, how important it is when you're moving towards paid client work, how important are the words that you use to describe to yourself what you are doing, because actually you might be scaring yourself instead of helping yourself. But I will say about that more. So thank you, Naomi, very much for sharing.
Thank you.
I think we have time maybe for one more person to share. Is there anyone else who would like to share anything about the self-assessment?
I'd like to share, and I like the part of selling because on this measure of 1 to 5, on a scale of 1 to 5, I actually gave myself a 4. But I also sat back and I thought, the best thing I can do, first of all, is to sell to myself my readiness to take a coaching session. This morning, one of my clients just called and said, I'd like us to have a conversation.
Yeah.
And the question is, am I ready to do that right now? I think we need to be ready in season and out of season. When a client calls, you need to be ready at that particular moment. But then I also got a consolation in that a coaching conversation is not driven by me, it's driven by the client. So it's for me to allow them to walk that journey with me just as a guide. So my consolation is that, I'm just going to guide, but he brings the subjects to the table. So do I sell to myself and say, yes, I can do this? I think it should always be a yes every time. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah, and also I think what you said made me think of the fact that readiness is not something big and global. Readiness is actually uneven, and it's okay if you're more ready in one department and a bit less ready somewhere else. I think my approach to moving forward is then to look at the easiest starting point and the minimum you need in order to say yes, as you put it very nicely. I see a hand, Anastasia, if I am pronounced this correctly.
Yes, that's correct. Thank you. I was just gonna say that in terms of selling, I told myself I'm not selling, I'm offering help, right? Or offering a discussion, offering to have a conversation. And and normally how I would go about it, I don't say, hey, like you want to, buy this course or whatever. I'm like, are you open to learn more? Are you open to explore this topic? And after that, it just feels different because I'm not trying to, sell them something. That's just what I wanted to say. Maybe if
thank you very much. And this is very much along the lines that I'm thinking about. I think in this transition from hesitant to ready, words matter, and most the words that we use when we think about next steps matter enormously. So it's worth, and I will come back to that, it's worth working on that as part of the process. So because I have to be mindful of the time, thank you for your comments and thank you for sharing. I will now continue with my presentation, and then we have another bit where we can exchange our views and questions. So again, just give me a second to share this. Here we go. So I hope this is working properly. Let me just check my notes. So when working with clients and helping them on their way to client work, I usually focus on 3 shifts. And when I thought how to best present to you the pathway that I walk with the coaches I help, I thought that going shift by shift might make it more transparent. And what I constantly observe with my clients is that it's not a lack of capability, but it's a lack of recognition of what already is, by which I mean that you are likely more ready than you think. And that's my working premise throughout this type of work. Why? Because you already carry embedded credibility. And by that, I mean your lived experience, your organizational exposure, your supervised practice, and all other experiences that made you who you are today. And the clarity which helps us to move on emerges from looking at patterns. So recurring themes, clients who energized you, and also looking at where does your attention naturally go in terms of your work. And it's really important to know that you're not choosing a lifelong identity. You are only choosing a starting point. So it's not fixed, it's not permanent. And I think this might alleviate some of the pressure. And working towards clarity, why? Because in my experience, clarity reduces anxiety, whereas on the other hand, vagueness fuels hesitation, which is not what we're looking for. The second shift is looking at a really persistent myth, which is I need to feel confident before I move. In reality, I think that confidence is the sequence of structured action. And often psychological doubt and practical uncertainty are entangled. And when working and trying to support clients, what we do is we try to separate them and both become actually then much more manageable. So there is another reflection question for you, maybe a question to take away, which is, if you had to move forward at 60% certainty, what would you do first? So if you had to move forward at 60% certainty, what would you do first? So you can either take a minute to think about it now or later. It's more of a floating takeaway question for you. I think what is really important to understand is this, that readiness grows through small, deliberate steps, not grand gestures. And those small steps, and this is really important, need to be aligned with the coach's personality, ethics, and life situation. So if your life is really full at the moment, but you still want to move towards paid client work, you will do it probably a bit slower than someone else who has all the time and energy available just for that, okay? And I think it's really important also to respect your personality. I often work with introverted people, and for them, moving forward and especially making themselves visible can be very different from the style that someone extroverted might use. So the third shift that I want to talk about is, what does it mean to be client ready? For me, it means that you can articulate who you help, you can describe the transformation, and you can invite people into a conversation about that. And then somewhere after that conversation, in the next steps, you can also state your fee very calmly. And this, for me, is client ready. So it's not perfection, it's actually functionality. And under all of that, so under the three shifts, sits a developmental pathway we will look at next. And this is the pathway that I take my clients through when I try to support them in moving from hesitation to practical work. This pathway is a direct consequence, I would say, result of my journey of helping coaches, consultants, and psychotherapists start their own practice. And it stems both from my own frustrations when I was starting out at the beginning of my coaching career, because I felt very much left to myself and was really finding my way through trial and error. And I got paralyzed and blocked many, many times on this long, long way. And then the other source of this pathway is actually a small workshop I first ran some 10 years ago, and which proved to be very useful to the participants. And therefore, it had also meaning for me. And over time, I have then developed this structured pathway that supports future practitioners in a very practical way, and also inviting them to stay themselves while moving forward. So as you can see, there are six steps. Becoming client ready in my book tends to follow a sequence. Sometimes if we skip phases, friction can show up later, not as a rule, but it may happen. And I'll now take you briefly through each of the steps so you might get an idea of how this works. So the first step is about clarifying. And here I try to help coaches and consultants to clarify what you already bring and who you are naturally a good fit with. I also help you choose a starting niche, not a final identity, because your niche will evolve over time. Usually life, work, clients bring stimuli which pull us in one or the other direction. And I think if we have the luxury of allowing our niche and professional identity to develop organically, we are really lucky. Sometimes it's not possible. I totally understand. And clarity also creates direction and reduces internal noise. And in this step, I usually work with clients on finding the easiest starting point. It does not have to be difficult. And if you attack the mountain as a whole, it is very, very difficult. But if you look for the easiest starting point, then I think the fear goes down and the anxiety disappears. The next step is about unblocking your path. And I usually do that by separating the mindset from practical concerns. So that means that we look at inner fears, inner beliefs, and we try to separate them from the practicalities of setting up a practice. So this is in the first phase of working with clients. There is a lot of self-reflection, a lot of exploration, taking stock of what already is available to you as a practitioner. Because in my experience, what feels like I'm not ready is often a combination of unstructured thinking plus a few unresolved logistics. And I think when we separate them, they both become much more workable. Then we come to the third step, which is showing up, making yourself visible. And I think when you begin becoming more visible, it's really important that you do it in a way that is congruent with you and not performative. So here in this step, I help my clients to sharpen how they describe their work. And also bear in mind that your visibility can really take different shapes and forms, depending on what feels authentic and possible for you. We're all different. And I think if we want to move forward without too much suffering, it's really important to do it in an authentic way. So the challenge in this step is to find your own voice and your own kind of visibility. I'd say that today, with all the social media and platforms and channels of communication, this is probably easier than it was 25 years ago when I was starting out as a coach. But on the other hand, it can create more anxiety. So it's really important to make steps which feel right for you. And here we come to the step 4, which is about structure. And by structure, I mean every logistic practicality that you need in order to set up your practice. So in this phase with clients, we look at how to create simple functional systems like calendar, payment, onboarding, and we talk about setting your fees, and again, doing it in a way that feels right for you, and not over-dimensioned or not a good fit with who you are. We also, in this step, decide on your work format, which might be hybrid, live face-to-face or exclusively online. And we talk a lot about boundaries, because starting something new will, for most people, it will not be the only project they are working on. Most of my clients have a regular job, and then keeping that for a while is actually a very good idea. And they start their practice beside their regular job or any other big projects they are working on. And so 1 or 2 clients are more than enough to start with, especially because if there is more work coming your way, like more interest from people, the temptation can be very big. So because you're starting out, you say, oh, there is all those people who want to work with me. I want to say yes. But if you say yes to too many people, you will burn out. And this is surely not what we're looking for at this point. And then we come to step number 5, which is about leveraging relationships. The truth is that most first clients come from existing relationships. And I believe that there are a lot of people out there who wish you to succeed. So at this point, you hopefully would be ready to start conversations. And here I will come back to the selling of whatever you want to sell. And I will share a short story about a client whom I was helping a few years back. And so we went through the first few steps. She was progressing at her own pace very nicely. So she had her landing page ready. She was able to describe what she was doing. And then she came to a session with me and she said, Barica, so now I will start selling myself. And I was like, oh, sounds frightening even to me. How does it make you feel? And she said, I'm terrified. I don't know how to sell myself. I don't know how to sell anything. I'm not a salesperson. I'm a coach. And then we started exploring what other words she could use, is first to talk to herself and then also when talking to others. So she came back with another version and she said, okay, so now I had found something else. I will be selling my services. And I said, okay, so that's an improvement. How do you feel about that version? And she said, yeah, it's slightly better, but it's still about selling. I'm terrified of selling. It's not one of my talents. So we kept looking further. So I asked her, so what are you good at? And she said, I'm actually very good at establishing contact and starting a conversation. And so the final version that she went away with was that she was going to establish contact with a few interesting people and start a few conversations with them that might lead to something they have in common and which then in the next steps might lead to work. And that was something she was comfortable with, and her anxiety visibly disappeared. So this is where I'm repeating myself from before, that what we say to ourselves when we are looking at next steps really matters. And it's worth pausing and finding the words which are in sync with who you are and which don't block you or paralyze you. Not all coaches are, in my experience, I am definitely not a salesperson. A lot of my colleagues that I know and have known for years, neither. I know that there are a few brilliant exceptions, but I would say that a lot of us excel in other departments. It's really important. And here in this step, leveraging relationships, it's really important that we stay within the relational, not the transactional. I think I think conversations create movement forward. Unless you are a very skilled salesperson, in that case, bravo, and you have something I don't have. Okay, and now the last step of this developmental pathway is the transition. Here we move with clients from practice to paid engagement. And at this point, my clients are able to lead conversations calmly and radiate their personality, and also invite next steps of the conversation without pressure. And what is really interesting is that even one paying client shifts your professional identity. And this one first client will arrive. It's just a question of time. And this is me speaking as a coach to other coaches in this conversation, when sometimes I'm the one holding the belief which is still growing inside of them. So basically what I'm talking about is that what I'm trying to do and what I'm sharing with you today is that when you see readiness as developmental, then the question changes. And it changes from, am I ready, to what needs stabilizing next. I also like people to, sorry, I will rephrase that. I find it useful when my clients can move from am I ready to I am becoming a practitioner, because the word becoming, at least for me, carries a permission to progress at your own pace, and a permission to be kind to yourself, a permission to be authentic. I am becoming, I think, can be helpful. It might not be everybody's cup of tea, but it could be helpful. Basically, my belief is that a developmental process can be supported, and I will speak a little bit more about it later. I have developed a 6-module program which can help with that kind of support. But now I think it's time to open the microphones and open the chat for your questions. So I will stop sharing. The presentation, and I'm all ears. I'm not sure I will be able to answer it all, but again, I'm not alone.
There was a question from Johanna. Johanna, do you want to go ahead and ask your question?
Yes, sure. First of all, thank you for the presentation. That was really helpful. So at the first step of the pathway, clarify the first point you put as patterns, and I wasn't quite clear what mean
I meant by
in this
that
context.
Yeah. So patterns, it means it's either if I work one-on-one, or if you go through my program, about which I will talk later, it means a few reflective exercises in which you look at your past and present life roles, professional roles. You look at situations where your strengths have come to the foreground. So basically, you take stock of everything that you have and everything you have learned in different settings, different roles, different situations. And then you look at patterns, what is standing out? So what are your strengths that can actually help you then formulate your offer?
Mm-hmm.
I hope I'm answering your question.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So the way I approach this process is really to have, so the first two steps are clearly very self-reflective. So a lot of mind maps and thinking, maybe even talking to people, then maybe let it lie for today, stepping back, coming back to it. And then slowly steps 2, 3, 4, and 3, 4, 5, and 6 become more action oriented. So there we're looking then at action steps, but again, baby steps, not huge steps to move forward. Thank you very much, Joanna, for your question.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes, Matthew.
Hi, thank you very much. I really found your presentation very interesting. I think I'm early in my journey here. And it's very much an emergent approach, which I quite like from a strategic point of view, because people often think strategy is kind of defined brilliantly in advance, but actually it's not. Real strategy is created in a much more emergent way. One word you didn't mention that I've heard a lot, and even I feel it a little bit myself, is rejection and fear of rejection. And you didn't mention that at all. Is that because you find that these kind of very proactive, gentle steps avoid that fear, or how have you been dealing with that fear of rejection?
Oh, that's a very good question. Thank you for that. No, it's not about avoiding it. I think it's simply because we have 60 minutes together and I cannot go into details. But if you think back to the slide where I thought about where I was speaking about inner readiness, this is the step in the developmental process where we take time with clients to really look at inner fears, and the fear of rejection is one of the, I'd say, the top 5, along with the imposter syndrome. So we address all that because it's really important. I think not addressing it would be flying blindly forward. So thank you so it's not avoiding, it's simply for the purposes of today's webinar, I cannot afford to go into more detail. But yes, very important thing. Thank you. Anyone else?
Can I just make a comment?
Yes, please.
I was just wondering the question that Matthew has asked. Or the fear of rejection. Would it be possible to maybe explore what are some of the causes of rejection, or what?
Sorry, I didn't get that. What is some of the?
What are some of the things that causes rejection?
Oh, I'm not sure I understand. What are the things that cause rejection? Aha, okay. Yeah, I'm processing. Yeah, it might be that the message is not clear, the message about what you're offering. It might be about the niche, that your starting niche was not well chosen. I'm just thinking. It might also be that that you try to move too fast. But it's very difficult to speak in general terms, if you understand what I mean. It's something that I think rejections, I look at them as temporary no's or as learning opportunities, at least in the early stages of trying to get paid work. So each rejection, especially if we have a chance of asking for feedback, that's not always possible, but sometimes it is. Asking, okay, so I understand it's a no, but I'm still developing as a practitioner, could you just share with me why you decided to say no to my offer? Then you might learn valuable lessons and do better next time. And I think that's the best I can answer at this moment.
Yeah, in selling, there's usually a part of handling objections. And the objections mean that you have many no's, and usually many no's requires you just to be clear about, to clarify what the coachee
what
is
the
not
offer
clear
is.
about. So it's just seeking for more information, and that's perhaps what we need to start thinking about. But I think the big question is, how can we be preemptive about the objections or the rejections and deal with them before they happen?
Yeah, I think being preemptive about it is okay to some degree, but it can also cause a bit of paralysis. So I would be cautious about that. But I think this is where we differ. All of us differ in our styles of how we progress and how we evolve. Thank you for now. I will go to Anna, if I see correctly.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you for your presentation and for the debate here. I was listening very, very carefully to what you all were saying, and I have a question for you, Barica. If coach, to my definition, a coach is someone who has preparation, studies, qualification, supervised training. He's not someone that comes out in the market and says, I'm a coach. Okay? That happens with lawyers, that happens with medical doctors, that happens with construction engineers. Okay? That happens with all the professions that need a qualification. And those professions need to sell themselves somehow to the market in a certain moment. Okay? You're not going to be a lawyer and just help friends when they are getting divorced or having a problem with their car. You need to go step by step. You have phases of entering the market with less complex situations and stuff like that. Selling is not about pitching in a hard way like a car salesperson or something like that. Selling is showing the value of how can you help others through the services you've been qualified for. So this is my context. In my mind, this is the context. So I don't have a problem with selling, because if clients buy my services, it's because I help them and they value those services. So that is selling. You can call it influence, you can call it whatever, but it is selling. Now, what is it different in your experience and the coaches you supervise? Why is it different with someone that has qualified as a coach, that has done his path to be a coach? Why is it different for a coach or for coaches that you deal with overall to get out in the market and get paid for what they do well?
Good question. What is it different from, you mean from other professionals?
Yeah, the imposter syndrome and all of that. It is all over.
Probably not much. Probably not much. Personally, and I can only speak for myself, I see the difference in the fabric of what we deal with. So it's human to human. The work we do includes vulnerability and openness. It's relational. Also, as coaches and consultants, I think we don't just sell our services. There is also this very important part of our personality that comes into play. So at the same time, I think it's a mixture of services and personality, personal brand, etc., which in my experience, makes people more vulnerable. And also, there is a dimension of responsibility often the coaches and consultants I help feel very responsible stepping into the professional market space. Will they be able to do it? Will it be good enough? They compare themselves with others in a unfavorable way often. So I think it's something to do with vulnerability and stepping into that. And also, and this is why my approach is definitely not a marketing approach. It has to do, it's much more person-centered, and in terms that it all stems from the practitioner, the message, the niche, the contacts, the relationship, etc. And I think this is probably the best I can answer this. If anyone else has anything good to add, please do. Okay, I am mindful of the time. So Caroline, you think we have maybe space for one more question?
Yeah, anybody else has a question? There is Anastasia put a comment in the chat about
Okay.
there is still a sales funnel, which means not every person will convert into a client this month, but they may get interested 3 months later.
Yeah, true. And I think this is one of the most difficult things to endure, which is to keep the faith that the clients will start saying yes. And that you may not get it the first time or the second time or the third time. I think it's about really being persistent in finding a starting point that works for you. Okay. I see Joanna's hand, and I think this will probably be the last question we can take today.
Great. Hi again. I have another question about patterns. So are there any patterns that you observe among your clients that you maybe find surprising, where you feel like, okay, there's a lot of parallels across the different clients you work with, of the challenges they have, of what causes a breakthrough for different clients? Or is it very highly individual, would you say?
I would say it's very highly individual, because as you know very well, being coaches and consultants yourself, each of us came to this profession from a very different angle. And I think their challenges are different because they're equipped, each of them is equipped in his or her own way. And I think the angle or the direction from which you came in equipped you in some departments, but maybe not in others. So we look at that. Maybe one thing that is quite common would be the point where people start pressuring themselves that they should be further along the developmental path as they are. Oh, but I should be doing this now, and my supervisor says I'm ready, so I should be doing that. And so managing that, and in a way being patient with yourself, is maybe one pattern that I detect more often.
So finding a good speed.
Finding the speed that is right for you, your own rhythm. This is so important. And maybe this is a good point to make a transition. Sorry, just a second. To make a transition to my last slide. So just bear with me a second. Yes, this one. So here I'm sharing with you actually what is one of the latest shapes and forms that my work has taken. It's a structured 6-module pathway. It's called Client Ready in 6 Weeks. And it's a self-paced online course for coaches, consultants, and psychotherapists with lively Q&A support from me. I find this really can be useful, and if today's content spoke to you, you might take a look. There is a small discount for the Ashridge community. And it's designed to be very grounded, very human. It's not about pushing anyone, it's just about creating enough structure so that you can move forward with more clarity, less friction, and at your own pace. And at this point, all that is left for me is to say thank you for the attention today. I feel really blessed that so many of you managed to take part in this webinar. And I certainly hope to meet you face to face, maybe at one of the events at Ashridge this year. I do come to the UK quite often, so I hope to see you maybe somewhere else and not just on a screen. So thank you very much, and I wish you all the best.